We'll be live any minute here. And then let me get my screen set up appropriately. There we are. We're live. Let me pull it up so I can see the comments. In Business Profit, Control and Freedom, we're letting people kind of pile in here. Let me change the view if I can. No. Cool. I'm just letting people roll in. Guys, as you roll in here, understand that I am in a hotel room in Lewiston, New York, and Jack, you're what, at an airport somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got the great Jack Butcher at an airport. And what I really wanted to do, for all of you that don't know Jack and haven't heard his story, I really wanted him to tell his Ferrari story, but I think I don't think that's allowed out yet. So
No.
we'll get you on a podcast. Dude, when you told that story, I still have people that are like, did you record that? I have got to show it to my friends. It's the funniest shit I've ever heard.
Yeah,
So,
it's a tale.
For those of you that weren't there to hear it live, stay tuned. We'll try to get the Ferrari story. It's one of the greatest entrepreneurial stories of all time. But we'll get it going. And so the real reason I have Jack here is because I talk a lot about the way that we operate at the network and the system with our partners, and we have grown. I'll just say the last 4 months was like 100% growth. We literally doubled our revenue, and like 27% and like 25%. We're on track for over 20% again, with zero paid traffic. And the month that I doubled my revenue from the month before, I took 21 calls and enrolled 17. And for anybody that's ever done sales or marketing, especially high ticket, that is a dream come true, because we hate getting on the phone. We hate when we know what we do can help people and they don't see it, right? Like they don't see it. They can't visualize what it's going to do for them. And then I get really pissed off because I know I can help this person. I'm just not articulating it or explaining to them well, or they're not listening or whatever. And so what we do is trust-based marketing, right? This is what we do. This is how we do it. I go live like this. I use my hands. I make gestures. I try to get people to trust, not just trust me, but trust the process. And most importantly for me, trust themselves that they will be successful in this process. So sometimes people trust me. They trust the process. They see the testimonials. But if the process sounds too complicated, or they feel like they have to be a genius to implement it, they don't trust themselves, and we lose sales that way. So my big thing was, and I talked to Jack, I talked to you, and I talked to Brian, who you partner with on some stuff, and said, if people listen to me talk, or if they watch videos, or if I could somehow get them to visualize what I do, I can sell them. I can help them. And so this conversation about scaling trust, it just became a conversation that we were having in the network a lot, which is my mastermind. And then Bryant got a hold of some of my audio, chopped it up, gave it to you. You put some visuals behind it. And for me, and this is from my perspective, I don't know the whole backstory between you guys, right? This is from my perspective. I said, holy shit, this is it. I can scale my one-on-one, the way that it's like, have you ever, if you're a parent, have you ever used, as an adult, explaining something really important to a child that doesn't have the information they need? It takes a lot of fucking patience. You can't scale that.
Right.
Because like the kid doesn't have what they need to understand, but you really want to help. So that's kind of what I feel like. It's like I'm an adult. And then overnight, literally, and it takes you like 12 seconds to do these things. It's incredible. You showed me the tools, the path to scaling that I don't need the patience to explain and help people visualize for hours and hours and hours, when you can literally do it in 40, 50, 60 seconds of having their attention.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. So if you guys are watching this, And we got about 15 people on now. If you're watching this and you want people, this is the result of the trust, is like people come, they listen, they visualize, and I know you're going to talk about it. The sale is so much easier. You could charge more. There's not a huge nurture necessary because all that's there's not a, you don't have to handle objections. They're all kind of busted beforehand. I'm super stoked. This is one of my favorite offers of all time because it's so congruent with, it's just congruent with the way I operate, right? Like just scale the conversation.
Yeah.
And then, which is what podcasts do, or even YouTube videos. And then what Jack does for everybody listening, if you saw the comments, everybody's like, Jack is so brilliant. You're not going to want to miss. What Jack does is he gives you this visual representation of all the things you've been trying to say, and it all clicks like in a matter of seconds. So honestly, I love this. I love that you have something prepared. I'm going to let you roll through it. And as at the end, we'll jam on it. I'll probably have some things to say. And then once we jam, we'll kind of go dark.
Yeah.
And we'll let Vault and network members kind of ask you questions about the process and whatever. And I just want to throw this out there. If you are a network member or a Vault member, I'm moving to California. I'm going to do an office day every single month minimum. If you come to an office day and we can get Jack there, we will pull this information out of you, and he'll make you just a visual representation of what you do, and I'll pay for it if you're a lifetime Vault member or a network member. So because you're going to see this, you go, I want that. And if that gets you to fly out to California and spend a day with me, I'll pay for it. So want to throw that out there, Jack? Go ahead and jam on this visual scaling of trust.
All right, let's jam. So I got probably about 15 minutes there. I'll run through it, and then stop me if there's anything in there that you wanna dig deeper on, but we'll just go from the top. So we'll start with a statistic. So this was I've been doing this for a while, but this was only actually recently brought to my attention. The idea that 67% of the entire population learns visually. So that knocks out 2 out of every 3 people you speak to. If you're not using visuals to communicate, then only 1 in 3 of the people you have a conversation with has enough information to make a decision. So instantly you're kind of leveraging that metric if you start to use visuals in the right way. So we talk about the levers that you can move with visuals. We've kind of nailed it down to these 5. So you have price, time, ease of sale, differentiation, and confidence. So dig a little bit into each of those. Price is, it's really just a positioning thing, a premium thing. Like the idea that you have a product that is so well articulated just instantly positions it at a higher price point. Time is, a lever that you pull by way of not having to explain yourself endlessly, because people can absorb the information visually and just get that meaning way quicker than a conversation ever would get them there. Ease of sale is kind of a combination of those 2 above. It's the elimination of objections, like, well, how does this work? What do I get? Where do I go? All of these things can be articulated visually. Differentiation, for the most part, especially in this world, there's not a lot of people playing this game. So, if someone's making a decision between you and someone else, and you have your process, you're communicating in a way more sophisticated way visually, then people won't even need to consider your competition. And then confidence is something that you instill in your prospects by showing them the systematic nature of your product, or the relationships within your product that brings them success.
Yeah,
so I'll get a little bit more into that.
I'm going to stop you right there because I want to let you roll. But the people, I know people that use visuals and they're beautiful, right? I've never, ever, when you say no, not a lot of people I've never seen a visual that makes people go, aha, I get it. Like that's the thing that you do so well. Because you can make beautiful stuff. People make beautiful looking, but I've never seen anything where you take a complex idea, make one little visual, and the whole room goes, holy shit, I get it. So that's the big difference for me. Go ahead and keep rolling.
Yeah, no, that's I mean, it's a good point. It's like there's, I guess visual is a broad term, but we're talking about like the ability to communicate visually, not just to visualize, not just to use the medium of visuals. So dig in a little bit more into that. So, the specific objections or the specific things that you're running into right now when you don't have the ability to articulate what you do in that way are things like, I'm not sure what I'm paying for. Can you like run me through that again? Try and explain it a different way, like use different words. What do I get? How does it work? I want to look around, or I don't see myself in the solution. And, what these things do is allow people to put themselves in that solution. So to go through a couple of examples of how we do that at a process level. So there's, a ton of different components of your business that you can apply visuals to communicate better. The first being, or the most obvious being process, especially if you're selling something that requires this journey. So this is a quote I pulled from a guy I'm working with at the moment who runs an e-commerce consultancy, super talented guy, gets amazing results for his clients. But until now, the pitch has kind of been this on like winged thing where we're kind of trying to figure out how to communicate with every individual prospect as they come through the door, as opposed to having a system that we know works, codifying that intellectual property and showing people that journey, this is just a fraction of it, but it becomes this difference between having this conversation where you're trying to convince someone that you have it figured out versus just showing them that you have it figured out and giving them, allowing them to kind of create context around what their journey would be like through that framework. And they instantly, it's the difference between let me think about it and like, I need that right now. So we do that for a bunch of different businesses. Service businesses in particular benefit from this massively because, those conversations are so long and difficult to articulate that if you can codify that process, and chances are, even if you don't think you're operating with a process right now, you have one. And these are all a product of just sitting in a room for a couple of hours and figuring out what someone does for their clients, and then codifying that, simplifying it, and getting it into this framework that they can tell a story with. And then supported with some other elements, build a brand around those things. Again, we're talking about raising your perceived value and all of these things that are gonna just completely blow away your competition. This is another example for something we just started working on, sketching from that last event, this idea of building client systems that eliminate anxiety, instill belief to create this confidence. So what this object does, sorry, I've got some passing chatter here. What this object does is really like helps you contextualize every part of your process. So if you're not doing this at every stage of your program or course or whatever it is you're running right now, then we can identify where you're going wrong and what you need to do in order to get back on track. This is an example of a more of a process focused journey. So this is actually the Trust Accelerator product that Brian and I work on. So as a prospect or as a client, you understand where you fit in the journey, where we fit in the journey, where you contribute, where we contribute, and over a course of X number of weeks, what your responsibilities are. So showing someone that, as opposed to trying to kind of think up on the fly a different way to spin it every time you have a sales conversation, is a really effective piece of marketing collateral and sales material for us. All right, so now going outside of the process space, there's this idea of visualizing a value proposition. I think this speaks at a higher level to the complicated products and the massive expertise that people have. So this is Adam Rundle. I'm sure a few people watching this are familiar with who Adam Rundle is, but finance mind extraordinaire, CFO, and I've actually had a couple conversations with Adam myself, and that helps the context on my end. But the difference between you looking at your finances, where you might miss one or two things, you've got your eye on certain things, not on other things, versus a bookkeeper who's going to be very, they're going to take that logical approach, they're going to log everything, versus an accountant that has a process that's probably based on an industry they're working in, or another client they have. versus Adam as a CFO that connects all the dots and has this holistic picture of your business and just takes care of everything so you can do what you do best.
Yeah.
Another example, Kevin, who's believe helps accountants figure out a way to better leverage their expertise and the opportunities that exist in the market to make more money and make more of an impact. So super simple. What Kevin does is push these two circles together. So the ability to like leverage that expertise and the opportunity to increase the amount of money you're making and the amount of impact you're having. And people see this and they're like, oh yeah, that's what I want. Great, let's talk.
Yep.
This is a little more complicated. I won't break this down, but this is super complicated framework for building like outsourced teams, but having one point of contact with an e-commerce consultant. So it's this idea of diagonal integration, and you could say the word diagonal integration on a phone call and somebody like, yeah, it sounds cool, but like, what does it mean? And you bring this diagram up, and this would be another candidate, Nick, for this kind of explanation that builds with the diagram. So you almost have this whiteboard sketch that takes someone from this first component all the way out to their desired result. A couple other things I wanted to show that are outside of, outside of your process, outside of your value proposition, but they're concepts that are kind of integral to the way you run your business, or the concepts that are resonating with your prospects all the time. So we can visualize those concepts in a way that, they just become super memorable. So this one is for the Trust Accelerator, and this idea of, if you have a product of a certain quality, but your communication is not at that same level of quality, then you have a ton of missed opportunity. You're leaving money on the table. This is Jim Fisher, something that we were sitting in, I think, in a conference room in Nashville a while ago, and he was explaining this idea of price compression to me, and I was like, that sounds interesting. I've never heard of that before, but the way like I ingested it and put it back out is, in a visual framework that other people can start to get a sense of what he's talking about. I'll blast through most of these, but these are a couple other economic concepts. This is a concept from a book, Flow State, the idea of eliminating boredom, incorporating anxiety. That perfect point in the middle is where you achieve flow and you make progress. Iteration, this is, I think, a Sam Ovens video. So take a 45-minute explanation from a video and distill it into a single visual tile that when someone sees it, they're like, okay, I need to speak to this person. I need to buy what they're selling. Another idea here is, what you're communicating versus what your audience actually needs to know in order to make progress. And quite often, we are over communicating without bridging that gap of that knowledge gap where people actually need information to get to where you're at. Cool. And then here's a couple of examples from Nick, the first piece we did for you guys, which is taking a 45 second, 60-second vocal clip that really explains like a fundamental component of what you sell or the service you offer, and turning that into something that people just can't really look away from, right? It's like this expressive typography and these diagrams that illustrate the concepts that are being discussed. And in 45 seconds, we've seen like huge reaction to these things because they're so different than the way a lot of people are communicating, and they just keep you keep you compelled to watch to the end, which is, we can't say about every other form of communication out there right now. So Steve Sims, another great clip. And again, there's just hours and hours of these that exist in books and live videos, and can be just tweaked to become these hyper impactful marketing assets. Another one. Yeah, man. And then we do a little bit of that stuff. Like, my background is kind of more on the commercial side of advertising. So the same concept applies to brands. So establishing like your authority as a brand, really, today, the requirement is that you put out content, you have an opinion on certain things as they happen, and, you make observations about the world that's going on around you. So, this is just another component of that. Operating as a visual brand is like pulling out pulling what's in your head out into these assets that kind of capture the attention of your market. And then, yeah, this is just an example of how the process works for the Trust Accelerator. So this idea of, you know, everybody's sitting on IP that they may not think is, you know, compelling, valuable, etc., but more often than not, as soon as you pull it out and you put it into this process and you see it visualized in a way that you've not seen it before, becomes so much more impactful, valuable, and resonates massively with your audience. There's a little look at some of the framework that we use inside that, and this is kind of a demo. The entrepreneur's favorite entrepreneur, and the Fisher Boys.
That's such a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's so that's what I wanted to show. Just a little bit of a high level overview of all the different ways you can use these principles to communicate what you need to communicate and take a ton of friction out of your process.
So I'll tell everybody listening, because not everybody was in that room last weekend or 2 weekends or whenever we were all together, right? These are concepts that people have literally been spending 2, 3, 4, 5 months trying to articulate effectively. And Jack listened to them. I mean, it was over a course of 2 days, but maybe 45 minutes, an hour and a half, and just put in front of them these graphics. And everybody goes, oh shit, that's it. And now watching you talk through it, I just want to, there's some notes I made that we'll just kind of go back and forth on. We talk about experts, anybody selling intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is so high leverage for them. So if you're an expert and you're selling what you got in your brain, right? You're selling consulting, you're selling whatever intellectual property you have. We always talk about the power offer, which is you articulate things in a way that make people say, yes, I want that right now. And what you've done effectively is you build a visual power offer, which is awesome. And a big part of that is, you know, like bridging that gap, acknowledging that base knowledge, or what I call the base knowledge disconnect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is what experts struggle with. So like we're so good at some things that we speak way over people's heads. So this whole process of like bridging that base knowledge disconnect and then creating a visual representation is so powerful for anybody, but especially the people, experts that are selling intellectual property. And the other thing about the base knowledge disconnect, which Bryant commented on here, is reducing the commitment necessary, right, for somebody to make a buying decision. Like,
and that's like, yeah,
to have
that's
to go
a product of like, sorry,
no, you're fine.
Like,
go for it.
That's like a product of building that ecosystem, right? Like you have your sales material that might take 5 minutes for someone to ingest, but you also have your, like, you know, those like super impactful statements that you've made that have resonated with your market that people can consume in 3 seconds, as opposed to them sitting in the middle of a live video that, you know, only 3% of your audience is ever going to sit all the way through.
Yeah,
it's about creating leverage. Yeah,
there's another aspect that people don't think about, and I've seen it because I talk about it. But even when you talk about things and you make videos, it's back to the basics. There's all these gaps that you're not filling in because you don't know that your prospect doesn't know, right? And when you go through this process, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen, when you go through this process, you cannot finish this visual with those gaps. So even this process, right, is
for sure.
You're filling in these gaps of knowledge, which again, it makes the buying decision so much easier for your prospect.
Yeah, like the conversations that I have with the folks that we end up making these for is like, you know, explain this to me like I'm 5 years old, man. And if, like, I will put myself in the shoes of a 5-year-old while you're explaining it, and if it doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you. Yeah. And we get there, you know, like 2-3 hours of just digging, and, you know, in some cases even less than that, because conceptually these things are varying degrees of, you know, complexity. But even the most complex of things, a couple hours of conversation, a couple minutes of sketching, you can get something out that is just like a whole new level of clarity.
Yeah, it's been for everybody watching again. I watched it live. Jack's done my stuff as well, but watching it live and just seeing the impact on an entire room of entrepreneurs that they've had their offer for years and years and years and have never been able to just point at it and say, oh, I finally get my own offer. I finally get what I do.
Yeah.
It's really cool, man. So what because I have ideas as to like where I would put it, you know, the videos on Instagram and stuff, but with these visuals, this visual stuff, where does it depend on what it is? Like, where do you place it?
Yeah, I mean, it does depend, but it's also like they're handy as like accelerants within the sales process. I just think of it that way. So if you're, you know, if someone asks you, you know, can we get on a call? What do? You can kind of prime that conversation with an object like this, right? It's like, I'm just going to need 60 seconds of your time to watch this. And you let me know if this process makes sense or this is kind of what you're looking for. And then we'll make a decision whether or not it makes sense for us to talk. So it's like that extra, and I think, you know, the technicalities of it can exist within a sales funnel. It could be distributed manually. It's like, I've had a lot of success sending these over iMessage when people meet someone in the airport lounge. It's like, what do you do? It's like, let me just send you this 60-second video.
Yep.
I'm like, all right, cool. And then they can then share that. That's a Jeff Moore, right? If they can see it, they can share it. And this, in quite literal sense, this is an object that can be transmitted in a different way than, you know, following someone on Facebook, bookmarking their sales funnel page, doing X, Y, and Z. You just have this like, someone referred to it as kryptonite, right? It's this hyper concentrated, hyper powerful piece of content that communicates everything you want it to communicate, or everything it needs to communicate before a conversation occurs. And depending on what you sell, sometimes you don't even need to have a conversation.
Yeah. I think you nailed one. The two things I have written down that may not be obvious. The ease of sale is awesome. But there's the two components of one, like you said, even if people buy from you, they want to feel really good about making that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So when their wife or their friend or whatever says, why did you give that guy all that money? They don't want to feel stupid. Like, well, because he was really nice or whatever, right?
Right.
They can now just say, hey, this is what he does. And they feel good about it. They look smart, and their friend goes, oh shit, I want that too. Alternatively, if they don't buy from you, they can still go like you should see what this guy does.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of feeling like an idiot trying to explain it, they can say, look at this.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the concentric growth, but there's also the most appealing thing to me, where I'm at in business, is you showed that visual of the client journey that you guys have for the Trust Accelerator.
Yeah. Let me grab that.
More money, and everybody watching this, if you have a business, more money slips through the cracks because your clients get lost than you could possibly imagine. And something like this is what I'm working. I think we talked about it, right? I want you to do this for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's not always obvious. Sometimes we say, hey, look, this is the analogy I use, right? Just go straight until you reach the lake.
Right.
And at some point they're still walking and they start going, where is the lake? Am I going the right direction? Maybe I took a wrong turn. And what you need to do is essentially say, hey, go straight till you reach the lake. Now you're going to see this tree on your right. If you see it, you're going the right direction. And there's this mailbox that looks like a walrus. If you see it, you're going the right direction. And that it gives them a point of reference to say, okay, good, I'm going there. Okay, good, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And you lose more clients in the tumbleweed zone where they look up and they're like, what am I supposed to do? And they just get tumbleweeds. Because I'm a retention guy. I'm like long-term, multi-million-dollar valuation, billion-dollar valuation. And that comes from not losing clients.
For sure, man.
Right. So that it's kind of obscure, but this process to me is worth millions and millions and millions after the sale.
Right.
By giving a A roadmap.
Like you're gonna have a little bit of a fall off if your sales process is like super well articulated visually, and then your product isn't, right?
But
like,
the world we come from, where we met, is marketing and sales. And that's exactly what happens. They bulletproof their marketing and sales. And then they just bleed out all that business when just something as simple as this, just a visual representation of that client journey is worth millions and millions and millions over the long term. So that's what stood out. I just want to break that down for people listening that maybe they're stuck in marketing and sales, which is Trust Accelerator is super powerful. People will buy from you when they trust you, they trust your process, and they trust themselves. But you also want them to continue to trust you after they give you money, right?
Yeah, you want this is I can't remember the name of it, but I'm thinking of the infomercial where the guy's like taping boats together and shit.
Oh, with like I know what you're talking about.
The slow motion water.
Yeah.
Fix the bucket.
Yeah. And so it is a super powerful marketing. This is how we're going to scale our message, is with audio and these visuals. But it's also how we're going to maintain retention and, get multiples of, our valuation will go up in multiples by allowing our clients to visualize their journey.
Yeah. And this is marketing material in itself, right? The fact that you could point someone to before they've bought something, like, well, this is how clear it is. Once you get to the pearly gates, or the journey to the pearly gates looks like this. That is that, knocking out objections piece, that instilling confidence before, because, you're instantly echelons above whoever you're competing with. If you're, if everybody's getting in there and they're kind of tasked with figuring it out on their own.
Yeah. And most people have bitter taste in their mouth from going into programs and not having this. So it's a huge selling point. So tell me real quick, what we're going to do is, we got a couple people on Zoom. If you're a Vault member or a network member, the link is in the Vault. We're going to go dark and let them jam with Jack for a minute if they want. But two things. One, if you're a network member or a lifetime Vault member and you want to spend a couple hours, come to California. So we'll sit in an office, we'll lock ourselves in an office, we'll jam on it. And I will have Jack make a visual representation. I'll pay for it since you're a lifetime Vault member. And two, Jack, what's the best way for the people watching and the people who watch this replay to just follow your work and see what's going on? Is it Instagram, Facebook? Like where
I think grab follow me on here on Facebook, and then I got links out to everything else, so you should see that as a result of that.
Cool. So hit Jack Butcher on Facebook. I'll tag him in the post and link to his profile in the Vault if you're watching this replay. But we're gonna go dark, and we got a couple people. We got Timothy Dick on Zoom, so I'd love jamming with him.
Oh man.
And everybody else, follow Jack, watch the stuff he's churning out, and if you sell intellectual property, I would strongly suggest you have a conversation with him now before this product and service becomes as expensive as it's going to be, because the value's there. So let me end the